So we can use the Snowsite UI to issue commands. We can use SnowSQL and the Snowflake CLI. But what if we want to author and execute commands in our own code editor, which we can then push down to our Snowflake account? We can do this with the Visual Studio Code Snowflake extension. Visual Studio Code is a very popular code editor with IDE features, and this is it running on my local system. It's very likely you either use this regularly or have some knowledge of what it is. But for those who don't, this is a bit of software on your local machine in which you edit and run code, supporting many different languages. In addition though, we also have loads of IDE-like features such as the ability to debug code, customize its look and behavior with extensions, integrate with Git to pull down files to work on collaboratively, and easily manage projects with an Explorer for files and folders. I'm not going to run through the install or go comprehensively through the UI for Visual Studio Code. I want to keep focus on the Snowflake functionality. But the instructions on their website are very simple. I've put a link to them in the resources drop-down for this video. Okay, to install the Snowflake extension, we go to the Extensions pane found in the nav menu on the left. If I had any extensions, I'd see them listed here, and we can also see some popular and recommended extensions. This is one big reason we might want to choose to develop inside a code editor instead of inside Snowflake, say from within a workspace. We could install a bunch of VS extensions which make the development process easier for us. Like one of my favorites is an extension called SQL Beautify, which lets me instantly format my SQL code in an easy-to-read way. If you click an extension, it gives you some high-level information about what it is. Okay, let's clear that. We'll now search for Snowflake. There are quite a few results, but what we want is the first one with the blue tick badge. This lets us know it's the real deal and authored by Snowflake. The top-level description quite nicely summarizes what this extension is for. Connect to Snowflake, write and execute SQL queries, and view results without leaving VS Code. This does oversimplify it slightly as you can run Snowpark Python code, run native apps and more, but in essence that is what it is. This Details tab gives us quite a comprehensive view of what it can do and how to set it up. But for now, we're going to install it and I'll show you by doing. So we click Install. This should add a new item in the nav menu on the left. We'll go ahead and click this and it will open up the Snowflake extension interface. This is really best understood as a stripped down version of the Snowsite UI. As we go along, you'll notice some of the same core functionality. Okay, what we need to do at the beginning is actually connect to our Snowflake account. If you have SnowSQL or the Snowflake CLI installed in the default location, it will automatically use their configuration file, found in your user's home directory, and pick up the account connection details there. If you don't have either installed like me, you'll see this screen prompting you to add an account identifier. I can find this by going into the Snowsite UI. I can go to the bottom left corner and click Connect a tool to Snowflake. Here we can see my account identifier, which, as we've covered, is a combo of the account name and organization name. If I paste this in and click Continue, behind the scenes, the extension creates a configuration file in a folder called .snowflake in my home directory, called connections.toml. If I open the .snowflake folder, I can see there is currently no data in this connections.toml file. As we authenticate in the next step, it will save the minimum account connection details to a profile in this file. So our next step is to authenticate with a username and password. Filling these out then connects me to my account. At the top, we have a drop-down listing the connection profiles from the connection.toml file. If we now open that file up, we can see our connection name and some basic information like our account identifier and username to help us connect in the future. This file can hold multiple profiles so we can switch between accounts if we need to. Okay, so below that bit about connections, we have our context, which we should be fairly familiar with. Firstly, we have the role we like to use. Then if we should have secondary roles active, which is on by default. Then which database, I'll select the sample data database. Then the schema within that database, I'll select a random one. Then the warehouse. These settings apply to any SQL file you execute from within Visual Studio Code, which we'll see in a moment. Up next, we have our Object Explorer. Just like in the Snowsite UI, we can see all the databases and objects that role selected has permissions to see. And finally on the left, we have the query history, We'll see what happens in this section when we create a SQL file to run. To do this, we can click this small file with a plus symbol. This will open up a new SQL file. If I go ahead and save this file with Ctrl S, it will prompt me to save it to my local file system. The SQL files created here are not stored in Snowflake, they're stored on your local machine. I'll rename it to Demo and return to VS Code. So now I'll write a very simple query, select all columns from the customer table and limit the output to 10 rows. You can see as I type this, it's attempting to autocomplete both object names found in my account, but also syntax like SQL keywords. We can execute all the statements in a file by going up to the top right and clicking these arrows. Or we can execute a single statement by highlighting that row and pressing Ctrl and Enter for Windows or Command and Enter for macOS. You'll see that very much like the Snowsite UI, we get our results in a pane down here, alongside some statistics about the query like the data scanned and the time it took to execute. There's also some quick options to do things like save the output locally and open the results in a new tab to view. We also get provided the query ID if we want to get more stats by searching for this in the Snowsite UI query history. Okay, coming back to the query history pane in Visual Studio Code, we can see this query has been recorded. Hovering over it gives us some high-level metadata about that query. If we now run another query, this time I'll retrieve the next 10 rows, we can see that it will be added to the query history pane. Using the query history, we can flick between the results of different statements. Okay, I hope you enjoyed. That's it for this IDE integration. See you in the next one.